Welcome to another episode of AI and Digital Trust. I am Manoj Agarwal, founder of Tetranodal Technologies, where we work with organizations and boards to build private, secure, and human-centric AI systems. I'm joined by my co-host Khwaja Sheikh, who is the CTO of IBM, as we explore how leaders can future-proof trust in an AI-driven world. And today, we'll be talking to legendary leader Alan Schwartz. Alan is a leader in global finance with a career that spans more than 4 decades at the highest levels of Wall Street. He's best known for as the former chief executive officer of the Bear Stearns companies, a firm he joined in 1976 and helped shape through roles including director of research, head of investment banking, co-president, president, CEO, COO, and ultimately CEO. He was a member of the firm's executive committee and board of directors, guiding Bear Stearns through some of the most defining moments in modern financial history. In 2009, Allen joined Guggenheim Partners as executive chairman, working closely with the leadership team to expand the firm into a diversified global financial services organization with more than $100 billion in asset under supervision. His work helped transform Guggenheim's broker dealer into a full service investment banking enterprise and positioned the firm as a major force across investment management, advisory, capital markets, and insurance. Beyond finance, Allen is profoundly committed to public service and philanthropy. He serves on the boards of Robin Hood Foundation, where he is a former chairman, the National Mentoring Partnership, the American Foundation for AIDS Research, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, NYU Langone Medical Center, and other national nonprofits. A, a graduate of Duke University, he later served on Duke's Board of Trustees, the Athletic Advisory Board, and as a chairman of the Fuqua School of Business Board of Visitors. Allen is widely regarded not only for his business acumen, but for his leadership through complexity, his commitment to mentorship, and his belief in using influence to elevate communities. Welcome, Allen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, for spending time with us. As Manoj was describing your background, I see the inclusive capitalism is in your DNA. You always try to do good for all. Your tenure has been very inspiring for us, and this reminded me some of the seminal work of Bill George, who is the former CEO of Medtronic and teaches leadership at Harvard, as well as the former board director at Goldman Sachs and ExxonMobil, Target, etc. I view him as the Peter Drucker of this modern century. In his research, he says crucibles define the leadership, and those moments are very crucial in shaping the character. And I'm sure with your stellar career, including your childhood, you might have faced some crucible moments. I was curious if you can shed some light on what are those crucible moments that you had that shaped your leadership.
Well, I think he's absolutely right. And I will say that, I faced a number of situations over time, but none of them were earth shattering. But recently, a senior executive, a woman at a major institution who just had something happen in her life, reminded me that as I mentored her 15 years ago, I told her that everybody's life is one phone call away from being disrupted. And every day you don't get that phone call is a good day. And where I had learned that and really absorbed that was now a long time ago. But when one of my children, my boy was 5 years old, I was in the office and I'm running, all of a sudden I get a call that your son's being taken to the hospital because he's got leukemia and we've got to get him in the emergency room, et cetera. And I remember like it was yesterday that everything else that was going on in that day and people going just totally didn't matter. And you had to then go deal with the most important thing in your life, which is your family and their health and their wellness. And so that's when I came up with, I say, wow, if you don't get that phone call, you had a good day. The only other I'd say that was close, what I realized when I always said, as long as it's not the health and wellness of your inner circle, then other than that, everything is lesser. When the Bear Stearns situation happened, it was something I hadn't thought about as also being difficult when you had thousands of very dear colleagues whose lives were being turned upside down financially, not health-wise, but having them all have that at one time, how many were close to retirement, et cetera, et cetera. That became a close thing to getting that phone call. But going through it, I was able to use what I had learned from when you say to yourself, every day you don't get that phone call is a good day. It's really just telling yourself that you've got to concentrate and stay calm because, you never know what's coming. And you learn a lot from those experiences.
This is fascinating, Alan. I think this reminded me that Doug Conant's another leadership guru, where he says, treat every interaction as an opportunity with how can I help a mindset.
Awesome. So now you have been in very critical situations, handling a lot of money, a lot of things, big stakes. And in order to make the right decisions, you have to sort of ingest a lot of data points. Even before the interview, we were talking about, how you connect the dots based on data that you collect. But connecting the dots also needs silence. It needs introspection. It needs, deep thinking. So as you are in the middle of these storms, a critical situation, how do you find that calm? How do you find that silence within you to be able to look at the entire landscape and make the right decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there's a lot of things that come with it. Point number one, I've advised a lot of clients on their situation. So when you're the advisor sitting there watching things going on, you learn a lot from who handles it well and who doesn't, and how to guide people to handle it well. So I have a number of clients who remind me that one of my key phrases with all my clients in negotiations, which is where a lot of emotions come. In negotiations, I always tell them that I have only one formula. IQ plus emotional level equals 100% of IQ. And so I'm not a great mathematician, but I think it means when your emotional level goes up, the percentage of your brain you can access goes down. And so I always tell clients, and anytime you ask somebody the dumbest thing they ever did, they'll always ascribe it to an emotion. They'll say, oh, I did this, it was so dumb, but I was so scared at the time. I was so angry at the time. So I tell my clients, if in a negotiation I see that they are getting emotional, that the other side is getting to them and getting emotional, I will find a way to call timeout. And we will go out and we'll call timeout, and it's happened many times, and then say, I don't know what dumb thing you're about to do, but it would have been dumb because you were emotional. And so having been in that all the time and in my career, then when it came time for me to be in the chair, I had to be able to tell myself IQ plus emotional level. And the other thing I told all my colleagues in the weeks, when things were really tough leading up to it, I said, one thing I've always known is we have to give 100% of our brain to the things we have any impact on. So what happens in chaotic situations is a lot of thought and attention is going to, for example, oh, why doesn't the Fed do this? Why won't the Senate pass this? What's wrong with this? What's the matter with that? I'll say, if we are not influencing the Fed or we are not influencing the Senate, any time we're spending on what they're doing or not doing is a complete waste of our time and our energy. So let's stay entirely focused on things that we can make a difference on. And things like that, I just, as I'd say it this way, when you tell yourself ahead of time, this is how I'm going to act when I see things getting tough, you have a kind of playbook in your pocket that you can then keep telling yourself. You're not having to make it up on the spot.
Great. Great.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Alan. This reminded, I think Manoj remembers this, our previous speaker on the session, Harry Kramer, literally said, are you in the movie or are you watching the movie? so so it's basically, this goes back to Robert Kaplan. You may probably know him, and now he is the he's the chairman of Goldman Sachs, I believe, vice chair, where he is very big on the concept of ownership mindset. So you really need to have that ownership mindset. Now, Alan, I would like to get, since we talked about emotional intelligence, I want to tie that emotional intelligence to one of the report that NACD came up. National Association of Corporate Directors came up with their Blue Ribbon Commission report on the building a high trust building a high trust board and CEO relationship. And I will paint one scenario now, and then after that I will paint another scenario. One scenario is around the crisis. How should the CEO and the board relationship should deal with? I remember watching the TV literally when the BP British Petroleum crisis happened at the oil spill. That CEO said in front of the press, I need my life back. So I was reflecting, he was so much frustrated. Was there a situation where the board that he had was not competent enough, where they could not help him during that crisis moment? Or is that the CEO was not open and transparent in understanding the problem, leverage the help of the board to resolve that BP crisis that he had, where out of all the stakeholders, in front of one of the stakeholder, in front of the press, he literally said, I need my life back. So I was curious, obviously you might have faced a similar crisis situation. How was your interaction with the board, and was the board helpful in that scenario when there was a crisis?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, our board was. But I've been in a lot of boardrooms in crises. And I think that I go back to IQ and emotional level. He happened to have been emotional at that moment, and something came spitting out. He probably the next day said, I can't believe I said that, right? So now, sometimes your emotions have to come out a little bit. And so, where to do it? In the boardroom, let it out. And then say, okay, that's over. So, yeah, our board was very, very, very helpful. Boards have to realize, I do think boards cannot play that big a role in how to handle these things. All they can be is the support, right? So being able to come in and explain what's going on and make sure they understand it. And if anybody in the room has expertise in anything that's going on, you want to tap them. A lot of times you'll even want to take them out of the room, and, you have a lawyer on the board and you're dealing with a legal situation, you might say, hey, could you come help us look at this one? We're trying to make sure we got it right. But all the board can be is emotional support. They're really, other than, as I say, a board member here with expertise on one subject or the other, boards don't manage situations. They just support the management.
Right. So this goes back to the scenario where there are parallels here. When during the financial crisis, Jamie Dimon was very transparent and open with his board, explaining, the problems he has, what is working, what is not working, where he needs some help from the board, etc. So he had a real-time interaction with the board. What happens if that CEO is not a Jamie Dimon? If there was somebody else, incompetent CEO, how does the board gauge that the CEO and the management are able to handle it, or what kind of things that they need to watch out for in the crisis situation?
Well, that's too broad a question to answer in a general way. I mean, I think I go back to, people have to realize boards are there to make sure the right people are in the right seats, right? That's their job. And then be there to support them. Now, good CEOs and good CFOs, and they know how to interact with their board and get their support. If there's a crisis and the management's having trouble dealing with it, it's possible, if they're really, like I say, if they get so emotional they're blowing up, a board member may have to step in, but the whole board can't. You cannot you cannot run a crisis with a committee. It just, will create all sorts of problems. But if there's somebody that could step in. The second thing is if there is a crisis and the management itself is saying we're overwhelmed, we're not sure how to do it, you can always look out to, there are outside crisis management firms. So you can bring in a third party, advisor who has had experience helping managements through other crises and things like that. But, there are no, when you talk about crises and you talk about reactions and everything else, there are no generalized ways to deal with them. It's all about the specifics.
All right, so let's dive into the environment that is changing as we discussed earlier. A lot of changes are happening across markets, institutions, societies. New technologies like AI are creating a lot of ripple effects across the board. So from where you see from your vantage point, do you see AI as a force that will widen the gap between people in board rooms, in companies, or do you think that's a technology that can bring people together?
Both. They're definitely going to be more, digital boardrooms, et cetera, et cetera. But human beings have to decide how they want to use it, and how they want to absorb it and how they want to deal with each other on it. So as it relates to boardrooms, I don't know, talk about the bigger, economy and the government and everything else. But in boardrooms, I don't think that AI itself is going to dramatically change the way boards interact. I mean, I know one very successful company, I'm friendly with in the UAE. They have digital twins, right? They have, each one of them has an AI twin, and sometimes they'll have a meeting amongst those twins, based on what they know, and they say, wow, they're very, very similar to our board meetings. So they're trying to figure out how to leverage that. I think, for example, what happens if a key board member is sick? What happens if a key board member is, got a problem and can't concentrate, can't be at the board? At that point, you might be able to use AI to say, well, let's make sure we would hear what he would probably say or she would probably say. So I think in the boardroom, it can be used, not that differently from the way boards operate.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought it up because that's exactly the kind of problems that we are working on for digital twins and all that. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Alan. Since we are talking about AI, I strongly believe that value migrates if you're not nimble. And when it comes to AI capital allocation decisions, how do we make sure the boards are nimble enough, agile enough, at the same time they are doing enough analysis rigor in the AI capital investments and making those decisions fast so that the competitors does not eat them for lunch? How, maybe if you can give a couple of insight around boardroom and the CEO management interactions when the timeline is short and you need to make huge capital allocation decisions, especially around technology.
Yeah, I'm not sure the timelines are getting that much shorter. Look, remember, AI was first around in 1960 or sometime. So it's a matter of the acceleration of LLMs and the size of compute and everything else. So there is a dramatic shift in the way and the impact, like nothing I think I've ever seen. I've been thinking about it a lot. We've been talking about it a lot in the sense that is fundamentally creating questions about every single business model out there. Normally, technologies affect one part of the economy or another.
Wajid?
I think I lost Alan.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he's coming back.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. All right, AI could probably fix my computer.
Yeah.
When it comes to capital deployment,
Right.
it's very interesting. It's not yet a huge capital deployment issue across many industries. It's something that's being thought about, but it is a huge capital thing. Fortunately, amongst the very large companies like the hyperscalers, et cetera. And I was recently one of the hyperscalers board member, and we were talking about this, and I said, for that industry, capital is the new M&A. So it used to be if we wanted to grow, we wanted to do better, we had to go see what we'd acquire. Given the antitrust pushback against large companies, there's very little you can do through acquisition. But now capital is a big, big, big issue for those companies. And so, but the process of how to do it doesn't change from any time in the future. And the point you mentioned, we don't want to get disintermediated is the innovator's dilemma that Clay wrote about. And so the bottom line is the innovator's dilemma is really not that companies don't see that there's competition coming that could change the way their business works. It's just that they're very, very busy taking care of their current customers and their current business. So it's hard for them to spend the time to look at the, new thing and adopt it. And so the bottom line is now with AI fundamentally potentially changing every single business out there, I do think boards are getting in front of that. Management teams are getting in front of that. And while they're running their business today, they're recognizing they can't be trapped by innovator's dilemma. So they are doing a number of studies and thought processes about where is this going. And the last thing I'll say on that is you don't have to, if you move too slow, you can get disintermediated. If you move too fast, you can, go in the wrong way. So one of the things I always say is, maintaining optionality is a great thing in strategy. You don't have to choose between A and B until you're forced to, but you need to make a couple of assumptions early on as to where you see things going. You can't simply leave if this, then that, and if this. You have to at some point take a position on what you think are a couple of key things that are going to happen in your industry. And then you maintain optionality about how to adapt and react to that.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Alan. I like the term that you used, optionality. And one of the CEOs I admire is Bob Iger, whom you know very well at Disney. And what advice would you offer Bob Iger? Especially if you look at at Disney, he had a collaboration with OpenAI to democratize the creativity that Disney is going to produce through OpenAI relationship. My question is, what would have board done, provided the insight where all these large companies that I see, they do not have a relentless the muzzle to make a deep capital investments on their own companies to build their own large language models, spending $1 billion or $2 billion instead of depending on acquiring another technology from another partner. Is it because they think that it is not their core business, or is it like they have not seen that the business model is getting disrupted to make such a huge investments? I see in the tech companies making huge investments, but not in the non-tech companies.
Well, because the drivers of large language models are a handful of companies. They're not, I don't think, people could be wrong, but I don't think people think they have to go create their own basic large language models. There are huge, when you're seeing, looking today, say, Amazon might put 50 billion into, OpenAI, and they've already put this much in the when companies are using a few $100 billion to create the base, process of large language models in their applications, I don't think there are a lot of companies that say we're going to go compete with them. They're creating the tools, they're creating the picks, and the companies have to decide how they can adapt their business to the use of those tools. When other competitors can now use those tools to potentially create products that are, now differentiated and will, disrupt the business in the way we used to do it. So in the media business, not just Disney, but others, you're seeing what I said earlier, they're definitely maintaining optionality. It's not clear how content is going to be created or distributed. And so they're doing several things that are non-exclusive, and, being out on the field and, being able to absorb what's going on and get the feedback. So Disney's doing this, Netflix doing that. They're sometimes doing it together. Other times, you've seen it with the cable operators and the streamers and in that industry. And so they're an industry that's definitely maintaining optionality. At some point, then you have to make a decision. We no longer have an option. We have to go A or B. That's when you give up your optionality but you're doing all your studying before you get there.
Thank you, Alan. I think at IBM also we do the same thing. We not only have our own Granite large language model, but we also believe in open source AI so that our clients can bring in any model that they want and then can use on our platform to tailor to their business process to drive the outcomes.
Great.
I often use IBM as a great example. A great example of that. IBM's value is in helping a large number of customers figure out how they can use AI and how they can implement it into the systems they already have instead of having to start from scratch. And so IBM's a great example of that.
So taking this further, we talked about digital twins being in the boardroom now, and with the increasing pace of AI and data that is being produced by so many devices, do you feel more comfortable, more confident that leaders like yourself will be able to have more information and make more robust or faster decisions? Or do you feel like too much information is actually going to be sort of contributing to loss of control?
I think it's the former, but there's also, look, anytime there's change, there's on the one hand and on the other hand. And it creates both opportunity and risk. And so, but on the first part, there is no question that already, I mean, I can, looking at things both for clients or for ourselves, gee, what if we thought about this? Normally we'd have a team go off and let's do some spreadsheets and let's go find out what others are doing, et cetera. We can just go in today before the, real expansion of AI's deployment and just ask what I call the machine. Say, what does the machine say? And I'm not asking it to make a decision, but all of a sudden I get this tremendous amount of data, and then summarized for me in a way that gives me much more data than I would ever have when I'm making a decision about something. Now, the risk on the other side is everybody else can get all that data. And so, they can be making adjustments at the same time. So when we wake up 3 weeks from now, it turns out what the machine saw from where it was before, it's all changing very rapidly. So that's why I say I've never seen in my career a technology. I mean, when I was around when personal computers started, that was a big thing. When the internet came along, that was a big thing. But it went from one industry through to another over time. So there was the lead industries to adopt. And then, this is unlike any I've seen, where almost any company we go to see has to be thinking about how AI could transform their, competitive position in the dynamics of their industry, all at the same time. And the challenge with that is not knowing really from which direction the change is coming. You've always had that you didn't know when you were working on personal computers, you didn't know somebody was going to come up with a phone that, took over. But those were rare. But now, not knowing, how models will change dramatically in a very rapid fashion. When the dot-com boom came along, Amazon saying we're going to, deliver, to people. It was a big game changer, but it took years and years. And so you could watch it develop, and a lot of people didn't respond, but at least it was, you could see it coming. Now, whether or not the way people are going to consume is going to be through an AI, just saying, okay, I'll tell you what you need. I'll go get it for you. I'll do it. That can happen, this year. So the pace of change is pretty extraordinary. And everybody's got to be paying attention to it at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like the word that you used, the pace of change, Alan. And there is a recent trend where, again, this is regarding the CEO succession planning for the boardroom. There is a recent trend where the hands-on CEOs are driving more value creation compared to non-hands-on CEOs. And I was curious, what attributes you will look for as part of the incoming CEO when you're trying to hire as part of the lead director.
Well, I think hands-on or not hands-on is very hard to define. It's leadership. And one of the things I've always said that I believe, people ask what type of CEO is the best? Is somebody like this? Is somebody like that? I say, no, there's all sorts of CEOs of different types that are very, very good and very, very successful. I said the one common trait that I think they all have and need to have is that they are self-aware of what they are good at and what they like to do, and they make sure that they have identified talent that is good at the things they are not good at and likes to spend time on the things they don't like to do. And I bring up the second one because I think human nature is such that, somebody can say, well, I'm not good at this, so I need somebody. But it's also, I think, when I always tell people, when somebody has 5 things on their calendar or their agenda that they want to get done this week, and they only get 3 of them done, almost every time the 2 that didn't get done are the things they don't like to do. So they spend their time on the ones that they enjoy. So it's very, very important that you identify the pieces of the puzzle that together with you brings all of the talent and the focus that you need, and that you empower them. You can't just hire them and say, okay, this is your job, but come back to me on this and that all the time. So I think that's the single most important thing that you can get. And the one thing I will say is, also they need to understand, for example, on that, I said some CEOs are very good strategically at seeing where things are going, where the company needs to be positioned. Some CEOs are very good tactically at seeing how to, then make sure that the company is executing and doing all their things. Very few are really good at both. There are very few really strong strategic, really good. But now, there are. I mean, I won't get into too much, but you brought up one, Jamie Dimon. I've always said Jamie's one of the best I've ever seen at being very good strategically and very good and on top of all the details. David Solomon at Goldman is another one that I've seen that in. Bob Iger is one in another industry, right? I happen to be doing finance. And there are others. But I would say the percentage of leaders that I've ever dealt with that are actually, what I mean by tier one, strategically and tactically, are not that many. And that's, again, where a great strategist needs to make sure he's got next door a really good operating person and a really good operating person has to make sure he's got a strategist down the hall too.
All right. So, continuing this theme, you have spent a majority of your career in finance, and trust is the foundation of finance and money. Now, in the era of AI, we can replicate voices. There are deep fakes. So, how do you see leaders will be able to create and preserve trust in an environment where we cannot believe, or what our eyes see, our ears hear? What is your take on trust?
Well, trust and confirm. My old boss and great guy, Ace Greenberg, he always said, at Bear Stearns, we believe that all of our people will do the right thing and we believe it very strongly. And we also look over the shoulder to make sure that they are. And you've got to trust and verify. And so now that it comes, yes, operating systems are getting more vulnerable, cybersecurity, et cetera. Now that's partially, though, there are systems to, so when we look at what's happening with blockchain and all that, if we're going to have more rapid payment systems and stable coins and things like that, there has to be an underlying network and system that, measures it in the same way that, God, when I was starting in the business, when I was in sales and trading, we had the over-the-counter trading desk, and stocks were trading, at 3 1/8 to a quarter or to a half. Now they're trading within nanoseconds around, a penny. And yet, if you looked at that and said, well, how many, false trades would there be? There aren't that many, right? And so the systems have come along to put in the technologies that you can deploy to trust and verify. The challenge is that if you get it wrong, the order of magnitude of how wrong it can be before you get it clamped down is enormous. And that's just something that we all, have to live with.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I think you bring up an important point on trust. The 2026 Edelman Trust Barometer recently came out, where it highlighted the institutional confidence has been eroded when it comes to trust. So the most business leaders have a bigger issue to solve that problem. And when we discussed about the CEO attributes, lot of these incoming CEOs are good operators. They are probably good at strategy, and they're also good at execution, but they are not trained in handling the external stakeholders, whether it is regulators or the societal impacts that are happening, etc. What kind of coaching would you like to give to the incoming CEOs, how they can upskill on the external stakeholders which they have not seen when they come into the seat? How can they become good at the situations that come in due to the external forces that are beyond their control?
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier. What are they good at, and what do they want to do, and do they find the right people? If we keep asking the question, how is the CEO going to be able to handle this and this and this and this and this? No CEO is going to be able to do it. And in fact, that's why I say, if I don't see somebody who wants to find the right team and empower them, then that's the CEO I worry about. The CEO who will sit in the room and tell me, oh, I can handle all that, don't worry about it, I got this, I got that, I got that, is fooling themselves. So all of these things about how do you handle, outside stakeholders, which ones? The other thing, I've counseled a lot of CEOs over my career as they coming in. You also CEOs have to learn how to manage their calendar in a different way than they've had to manage it. The demands on your time and attention are so dramatically different when you step up as CEO than when any other job you had. And so figuring that out and realize, okay, I'm going to have to spend some time with my board members, because I always tell CEOs, you should not only meet in the board meeting, but you should meet at least in between board meetings, at least once with every board member and usually I say on a side, it's very good when different board members are very strong in different things. They like it when then you're calling them on the thing they're strong at, right? And so you have to do that. All of a sudden, you have to spend time with investors. You have to spend time with the research community. You have to spend time with regulators. You have to spend time with internal employees, et cetera, et cetera. And now you have to have a way to say, for example, I say when the IR people come in and say, hey, these clients are really big, they really want this, you say, okay, I've got this much of my time devoted to IR. You've got to decide whether or not this is 1/20th of the amount of time you've got, or do you want to wait and use it for something else? So being able to find the right people in the right areas and empower them. And then the whole idea is make sure they come back to you. I had a great partner, unfortunately passed away for many years as my chief operating officer. And he always said to people, his job was to make the decisions on the things that I would not want to have to be involved in, come to me to talk through a decision that I would want to be involved in that decision. And his job was to get it right. And so I said, that was perfectly said. And what it meant was over time, you have to have a dialogue. So I said, and if on the one hand, he'd come to me with a situation, I'd say, well, here's what I think, but you know what? Next time you can handle that one yourself anytime this comes up. In another one, he made a decision. I said, if I'd have been asked, I think I might have had a slightly different. So if that one comes up again, bring it to me. And that's what a CEO has to do with 5 or 6 other people, I would say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So now let's again going back to your vantage point, how you see the world. So one of the hardest lessons that we learned all collectively, and I think you were at the center of that ice storm of the financial crisis in 2008, is that the most dangerous risks often don't announce themselves. They just start to build up slowly in the background as everybody's doing, sort of what they are supposed to do. Now, looking at the current environment with AI and cybersecurity, do you see anything that you can understand this is going to be a risk that other people are not aware of, or they are taking it, casually? Do you see anything from your point of view?
Well, I don't know about casually. It's a matter of how much you focus. So I would put it this way. I'm a recovering research director and economist. So I'm always looking at it on a macroeconomic basis. And what I've always tried to do from a macroeconomist point of view is identify the things that are dramatically different versus all past cycles. And because then all the economic models that say when this happens, this happened, they drive people's decisions, but a variable has changed. And I could go back to what some of those were during the financial crisis, but now I think there's a bunch of underlying things changing. Don't know when it's going to show up or what, but we had this very good period for, I don't know, since I'd say in the post 90s through into 2000s. With the collapse of communism brought about a big surge in globalization, and you had a tremendous global economy that was driven by a number of very positive factors. I start with on demographics. All of the major countries had very large percentage of the population of working age, which means they had a lot more people to produce, and they had a lot fewer people to have to spend on. So there was demographics were a big positive, and then bringing in lower cost labor and everything else, sharing, brought down, opening up the supply chains completely, brought prices down and helped growth. And so that brought interest rates down. And so, large working age populations are also the best time for government to tax the largest percentage and keep it to get the funds for the future. And then you had, very open, supply chains, et cetera. All of those things are reversing. Now, all the major economies in the world have aging and declining population growth, and they have a declining percentage of their economies, or of their populations rather, are of working age, and a larger percentage of retirement age, et cetera. So that's a reversal that puts pressure on, one, fewer workers can mean fewer hours, and two, the time to be, you have fewer percentage of the population to tax, and you have many more people that you have to spend. So it's a shift there. And the time during which they could have saved for that, almost every government just kept running up deficits. And so now it's showing up as major increases in government debt. And then there's the last one, which I would call dysfunction, which is politically, while that period I described was a very big positive for the global economy, and it took more people out of poverty than ever, but at the same time, it was in emerging economies, people came out of poverty, but in developed world, it was the top end did extremely well. The middle on down has done extremely poorly. And those people don't trust the system. They think it's been unfair, and it's created, a movement now that is not the left versus the right, but the haves versus the have-nots. And so that has created a lot of political dysfunction at the same time. So these are now a dramatic shift in secular trends. You've gone from secular, very positive forces of tailwinds, and now you're dealing with headwinds. At the same time, profits are very strong. The AI boom is creating a big capital spending wave that can be followed by more capital spending. And so if you really look at what are the things that could be big positives to offset these headwinds now, one, we need productivity. AI can build that not just because of AI, but because of the infrastructure to support AI. And you need that, and that can be brought rapidly to the developing world that didn't participate. So the populations of young people down in the global south, let's say, when we're now trying to reshore and not have everything come from one place, could really build up and come into the global economy. So there's a bunch of balancing things. The thing I say is not that people aren't aware of the risk. It's just you have to look at the balance and realize, don't just think it's going to behave the way it did when those fundamentals were different.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fascinating, Alan. The comment that you gave around secular trends. Now, the productivity that you talked about, within IBM, we literally saved $4.5 billion using AI, drove the productivity alone. Those savings were redirected for the innovation, and that innovation led to the newer products, going back to the higher revenue, etc. Now, I want to take a couple of case studies here. If you look at Boeing and General Electric, even during those good times, there was a lot of turnover of the CEOs in Boeing, where till recently the Boeing had a lot of problems until the new incoming CEO has to fix it. And the same thing in the GE. And then once Jack Welch left, everything was in the downward trend, even during those good times. What can we learn from the board oversight standpoint? Is that the board failure in terms of how they were governing, that there were so many turnovers of CEOs in the case of Boeing as an example, when the globalization is already standard? Anything that you would like to add on that?
Yeah, I think, boards are held accountable in the end, but again, boards are held accountable for having the right people in the jobs, doing the right things. And the board can't be, going out to the factories and seeing whether or not things are actually being created and built the way they're being told in the boardroom they are. So it's all about what are the, what have you built in as the check systems for the right people, and and how much, you have to think you have the right people, but you have to make sure that they're being overseen by the right people too. So they're kind of different too. What Jack left behind, there was also the end of an era, the whole conglomerate era that created this perception that you could just have all these businesses and allocate the capital, and everything was about, oh, all I have to do is report my earnings, not my free cash flow, et cetera. There was that's where I get back into the innovator's dilemma, and that's where I get to what I just said about recognizing that this period where it was a great period for this, but this variable is now reversed. You got to be able to say we got to shift when the winds shift.
So continuing with that, the looking at the future, how the future is going to unfold. You sit on multiple boards, you interact with many boards, and the boards are being now asked to oversee technology implementation like AI systems, cyber security, data integrity, speed. And from what you have experienced, are they well equipped to handle all these changes? Are they well informed? Do they have the level of awareness about how these technologies are going to impact their companies and um, and the future of their customers?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no one answer to that. I think all companies, I think the construct of boards is changing and should be changing. I believed for a long time that boards were too much driven by, oh, let's get C-suite people in the room. They know what it's like, et cetera, et cetera. You need a more dynamic group. You need people with different skill sets. I'm an old athlete. I always use the example. I say, on a basketball team, if I've got 2 7-footers, I maybe want to go get a point guard. So let's not have everybody in the room be the same. So building boards around different capabilities and different backgrounds and experiences is a good thing. Having very open board meetings with that is a good thing. But the boards themselves can't, I just said this, they can't be drilling down too hard on it. They have to be seeing if the management team, I go back to the very simple thing. We say, can the board this and the board that? Boards cannot run companies, period, full stop. So they have to be comfortable. They have the right people in the seat. That's their job. And so they have to be hearing from the CEO. The CEO, are they doing strategy reviews of these things? Do the strategy reviews seem thorough and well done and everything else? If the answer is yes, the board has to just keep going with it. If, as I said, one of the board members has great expertise in one aspect of this, then they should be available as a consultant. And I think you're seeing more of that. I think you're seeing more one-off interactions with certain board members that bring an expertise to a certain subject.
Got it.
Yeah, this is a very holistic conversation, Alan. Looking at all the issues that we discussed on this call, imagine Chuck Robbins, the Business Roundtable chair, gives you a call this evening and asks you 1 or 2 things that he would like to learn from you that he can implement as part of his Business Roundtable efforts. What are those 2 things that you would advise to make the world better?
Well, I think point number 1, I believe for quite some time that we're in a period of profit with a purpose. And this is something I said that with the Business Roundtable, they put something out on that quite a while ago that I completely agreed with, but I didn't completely agree with the way they said it. And what I mean by that is I was saying to them, they were sort of saying, hey, we're going to continue to, look at shareholder value and work on it, but we're also going to look at other communities and we're going to worry about them. I said, as soon as you say we're going to also do this, people think it's something that you shouldn't be wasting your time on. What I was saying, and the way they said it actually said the same thing I did, but it was so funny, I could tell that people were going to respond. And so I said, it should be that going forward, the business roundtable leaders recognize that in order to drive shareholder value, you have to be recognizing the communities and dealing with environmental and social issues. Just have to. Why? Point number one, government used to deal with externalities, and government would deal with it, externalities are so much bigger than government has the capacity, and especially the governments that are fractured today, that business is the only place that can come up with the lead. And I say, in order to create shareholder value, over time, the companies that successfully deploy the new technologies, et cetera, that decarbonize, that do things like that, they're going to be the ones that consumers want to buy from. And so, and suppliers, the same thing, and everything else. So the business community, in my opinion, totally accepts the fact that they have to embrace those things into, their ability to create shareholder value. So I think it's important that message just keeps getting out there in the right way. There's a large group of companies coming together now that are creating an alliance that they're trying to get carbon, for example, carbon density measured in a way that is globally accepted instead of 5 different ways, because they recognize that over time, people are going to want to know whether you're delivering one that's, clean or not. So they're coming together to say, look, we're going to have to do it because we're not having any government agency say, here's the rules. And so that's the most important thing. The second one, I think that I mentioned demographics. I think that a large part of business, not on purpose, I guess I would say, but a large part of the business community has had the ability to treat their employees like widgets. There was, as I say, as a lot of jobs move overseas, there was a lot of excess labor, and you could, just hire them and treat them whatever way. The reality is demographics are, we're going to have a dramatic shortage of workers in a number of areas with the skill sets to do it. So businesses are going to have to lean forward into how to train and manage employees, and again, in a different way. I'm not saying they were wrong or right, but in order to get productive workforces now, it's going to take not just hiring people and paying them, but training them and doing other things.
Great. One. I think this is last question here. Now you mentioned purpose. We all have vision statements, mission statements for the companies, and I think at the top, the purpose and mission, it is relatively clear. But how do you make sure that trickles down on day-to-day basis as the frontline workers, as the middle managers, they are taking daily decisions? How do they align those decisions with the overall purpose?
Yeah, I just think you got to walk the walk. And first of all, there's a lot of statements at the top that are made without any real commitment to them. So if you're going to make them, you have to have a plan to achieve them. And I think that's getting more and more what companies are realizing and doing, is they're saying we're into this. And then they've got to, make sure that they have the right people of the right culture in the various responsibilities, who have to report on what's happening with the, I guess I'd say, the subtle things and harder to measure things than just the hard numbers. So it's not that easy, but it's not that hard either if you really believe in the culture and people. One thing you say in leadership, you have to make sure that you are living the culture, and people will observe your behavior. And, I always said this is about parenting too. More is caught than taught. Yeah. And so the observations through the ladder, when they see, I mentioned my old boss, Ace Greenberg, before. Ace Greenberg would make sure he did everything that he ever wanted any employee to do. And so people would see that and not think, oh, well, I have to do it, but not the top brass.
Yeah. Okay. Khwaja, you can have the last word.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. And you made this evening the most memorable. We really appreciate you sharing time with our wisdom here. And we have on the LinkedIn Live a lot of aspiring CEOs and aspiring board directors, as well as a lot of the C-suite here. I know there's a lot that they can take away to make this world better.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.